Britain, France, Russia. We have three historical evidence that the Count of Saint Germain was suspected to be involved in a major political plot. In this video, we are going to follow the itinerary of the Count of Saint Germain amongst the many courts of Europe to try to understand what was its political agenda. Nineteen 1745 in London. We are in the climax of the Jacobite Revolution, which is a group of Scots who want to replace an old style of monarchy in Britain. And the prisons are filled with prisoners, opponents. And the son of the Prime Minister, Count Horatio Wolsey, mentioned that in that prison there is a very peculiar gentleman. He now goes by Count of Saint Germain, but obviously that is not his real name. He has been living for 2 years as a music teacher and composer. He's extremely cultured, elegant, talented, speaks multiple of languages, and to the wonder of Wolsey, he has no interest whatsoever into seducing either woman or man. And that gentleman is suspected to be part of the revolution, but he's at one point released without charge and continue his career for 2 years. That very anecdotal mention is the first historical record we have about the Count, and the first complot to whom he's suspected to be involved. Then the Count disappeared for 12 years. But in Paris, 1758, the Count appears and is presented to Louis XV. He received the castle of Chambord to establish his laboratory, and he becomes very intimate with the king. And Choiseul, who was a kind of prime minister, was very jealous about it. So Choiseul decided to pay an actor to act as if he would be the Count of Saint Germain in public places like pubs to make his reputation dirty. But the fraud was discovered, and the reputation of the Count was whitewashed. His friendship with the king grew stronger. Amsterdam, 1760. There is a war between Britain and France and their respective allies. And as the King of France feels that he's going to lose that war, he sends his beloved friend, the Count of Saint Germain, to negotiate in Amsterdam peace for him. But one more time, Choiseul managed to intercept a letter from Saint Germain, and with that letter, he managed to convince the king he was a traitor. So, this is the conspiration suspicion number 2, and Saint Germain had to leave France because he was no longer welcome there. St. Petersburg, 1762. The Count of Saint Germain have been said to have taken part of a coup who overthrew the Tsar and who put, instead of him, his own wife, Catherine II. And the reign of Catherine II was a game-changing reign because back then Russia was like a medieval state, and Catherine did a lot to modernize her nation. 1766. Prussia. The Count of Saint Germain put himself under the protection of Frederick II, the great monarch that has modernized Prussia and created the very heart of what will be later Germany. Paris, 1774. According to the Countess of Hadman, who was the confidant of the Queen Marie Antoinette, the Count of Saint Germain took contact with the Queen and with the King Louis XVI to warn them of the imminent risk of a revolution. Still, according to the Countess of Hadman, Saint Germain was present the day both have been executed. 1774, Alemannia Baltica. The Count gets something like a retirement with his friend, the Prince Hesse-Kassel. So they spend a lot of time together and conduct all sorts of experiments. But that is the end of the public career of the Count. And officially, the Count died in 1784. He's 93. And there is a record of his death and a place supposed to be his tomb. The Prince Hesse-Kassel was very close to the Count of Saint Germain. So when he says that he knew the origin of the Count, we should take his testimony seriously. According to Hesse-Kassel, the Count of Saint Germain was the son, an illegitimate son, of a great politician called Francis II Rákóczi. And remember this name because that's the name that Alice Bailey is using to speak about him. So Rákóczi was a Hungarian monarch who fought all his life against the Habsburg. And he placed his son to one of his friends, the Grand Duke of Tuscany, Gaston de' Medici, which makes that even if he's an Hungarian by birth, the Count of Saint Germain grew up in Italy. And that's the best hypothesis we have about his origin. In this video, we just have covered the most prominent place and courts he have frequented. He traveled much more than that, actually. So, the Count has traveled everywhere in Europe, from St. Petersburg to London, from Denmark to Italy. The Count was intimate with the most powerful and influential monarch of his time. But the most surprising, that he was involved with many types of political system, from the good old style monarch to the most progressive people. So if we want to make sense of that, we just have two hypotheses. Or he had no political opinion, he was just doing what it takes to gain prominence wherever he was. He was just an adventurer. Or the other explanation is that he was starting to build a European network to create what would be later a pan-European feeling. And if we think about it, soon after him came Napoleon. And Napoleon, who wanted to create a pan-European nation through violence. But actually he succeeded because all his enemy has to gather and to create the first European gathering to resist him and to defeat him. So somehow Saint Germain may have been a precursor of pan-Europeanism. And nowadays Europe is in a kind of a difficult situation, but there is still many parts to integrate into that great Europe.